Welcome to the Awesemo Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal EMac coming to you with one Greg Ehrenberg as we get ready for Thursday's slate, double slate, early and late, or I guess main, on August 20th. For those of you, I'm going to say it at the top right now, the promo code, the best one we've put out yet for basketball, promo code MAMBA, 1 week all access NBA content. $8.24. That's barely $1 a day, and they're running 4 basketball games per day, and they should for basically the next week because it doesn't look like anybody's going to get swept in these series. We think enough weirdness has already happened, but check that out. Best offer we can get, plus you get Slack chat, but you get all the tools, you get the boom bust tools, the projections, both for players and for ownership. Well worth it. Greg, I'm catching you on the spot here. Did you use any of those tools before you came to Awesemo?
I honestly did not, but I do use them now, and I like them very much.
Has it changed dramatically? Did you say, where have you been all my life when you started using some of these? How can you save me so much time? Oh my goodness, what was I doing before?
You know what's funny is, so a lot of the stuff, and I don't know, like, you've worked for a bunch of different sites at a bunch of different places too, and you do kind of get the mindset where you just assume like, hey, every website kind of has the similar-ish tools like that, and so you kind of think like, hey, lineup builders are generally the same, content's kind of the same, and this isn't me just like blowing smoke or whatever. The tools at Awesemo really are way different than the other sites, especially the things that I use a lot. Like I really like the top stacks tool for baseball that Alex put out. The top pitchers, top 2%. Like those are things that are unique that he puts out and that he uses that don't get used anywhere else. And those are really valuable tools you can't find anywhere else.
Right. And the other thing I like about it is in conjunction with the Slack chat, we explain how to use it, because some of them you're just staring at and, man, I was using some of them wrong, or I'm not using some of them to their full extent. And then you say, oh, hey, how do you do this? And they're like, oh, you don't use it this way? And then it's like the angels start singing and a rays of light come down. You're like, oh my goodness, how was I not doing it this way beforehand? And that's really helped. The stacks tool is probably our most popular thing right now. But Alex is already talking about augmenting the one that he did similar for NFL. Stacking, game stacking, and quarterback combos. So that's kind of an interesting one, and it looks like, knock on wood, that the NFL is still chugging towards. I forget what the date is. I have September 21st stuck in my head, but I think it's like the 16th or something like that. But NFL is moving along. Remember, we're not having preseason, so are they even having any glorified scrimmages, or they're just kicking off with week 1?
They're kicking off with week 1. I mean, they might do like inter squad scrimmages or something. Like that's what baseball did. Remember, like baseball had some of those summer
like
camp games where it'd be like,
September 10th. My bad. Wow. So that is 4.5 weeks away. Wait, my math is even off. That's just over 4 weeks, just shy of 4 weeks away. Jeez, that is sneaking up.
It is soon.
I think because where my internal calendar's off is, baseball, we're not quite a month into it yet, which is, by the way, half the season, but it's August winding down. All the neighborhood kids that are getting ready to go back to school, and some of them are heading off to college that they're not doing distance learning at. So it's sort of like, wow, I guess fall's not that far behind. So here we are. Goodness. All right, let's jump on in here. We have, let's see, a 4-gamer. We'll kind of talk through DK here a little bit, and then we have an 8-gamer. That's the main slate. So for that, we'll focus more on pricing and such. The 4-game slate is, it's reasonable, but we don't really have all of the pitching listed yet. So I'm going to go over here to Major League Baseball's probable pitchers page. So our first game, we don't have anybody for Tampa Bay yet, but we do have James Paxton. For the Yankees. He has a 7 ERA at the moment. He does have 18 strikeouts. He did see an uptick in his fastball, which is key, but he has been struggling somewhat. We talked, Terry McBride, T. McBee, and I talked a little bit about him, and we both have watched a fair amount of James Paxton. One, he likes him because he's a Yankee, but I watched a fair amount of his Mariners games. That's the one nice thing about the MLB package. I can still keep up with the Mariners if I can manage to stay up late enough to watch them. But he is a phenomenal pitcher. But he has it's hard to describe, but he has a very unique throwing motion, and something is always out of alignment at this point now that he's on the wrong side of 30. So if he's trying to favor his elbow or his forearm, all of a sudden his hip hurts, or his knee, or he screws up his plant foot, and then it's his ankle, and then it's something else. So mechanically, he's just been off at this point. So tough one there. Rounding out the rest of our guys, Vince Velazquez, kind of a batting practice pitcher. Trent Thornton, we'll have to see what happens there. He's been dealing with a sore elbow and has been on the shelf for a bit. Chase Anderson is in the mix. Spencer Howard he's a rookie, but he's coming up. He's been dealing with a blister injury. He's
just to correct you on something, because you said said Vince Velazquez and Spencer Howard.
I'm sorry, you're right. Those are next to see. The probable pitchers page is not doing me any favors because they're doing what they ought to do. So let me get back here. Okay, so it's going by DK. It's Chase Anderson and Spencer Howard in that one. My apologies. The other pair will be on that later game. Please note that Philly and Toronto is on the DK slate. It is a 7-inning game. They did the same thing today with the St. Louis and Chicago game for their afternoon slate. I don't mind that when it comes down to pitching. It gives us 2 more options. And frankly, I don't think these guys are going to get shortchanged, because I'd be shocked if anybody involved in these games goes a full 7. But if they do, that's a complete game bonus as well. But we've got Lucas Giolito and Spencer Turnbull, and then we've got Coors is on this slate, Herman Marquez and Christian Javier. Who's standing out for you? Everybody's got a little bit of a caveat, with the exception of maybe Lucas Giolito, who is not quite in last year's form, but at least the strikeouts and the pitch count is there for us.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up Giolito's numbers right now. He's regressed a little bit, particularly with his command, because he was a guy who a couple years ago had good stuff, but wasn't really generating swing and misses. And then his big issue was the walk. So 2018, even though he had good stuff, Giolito only 6.49 strikeouts per 9 innings, 4.67 walks. Then last year, he was able to still use that same stuff. He was able to hone it, get the strikeouts, and keep the walks down. So he was striking out 11.62 hitters per 9 innings, 2.9 walks per 9. Now this year, he's kind of been in between those two things. He's still getting the strikeouts, 10.41 per 9 innings, but he's walking 4.88 guys. So like you said, it's not quite peak Giolito, but relative to the other options on the slate, I think he's a good option. It's a plus matchup against the Tigers. And just because there isn't really any other high-priced pitcher that looks like a good option, the other 2 decent pitchers I consider on this slate would be Christian Javier and Herman Marquez, and they're pitching at Coors Field. It kind of makes Giolito a little bit of a no-brainer play for this slate.
Yep. Then we've got Spencer Turnbull. He is 8,500. Now we're talking SP2, because I'd rather go SP1 with Giolito. I said last night on the early bird that I wanted Jack Flaherty as my SP1, and he made it an inning and 2/3 today. So, and I said, he's the best pitcher on this whole thing. Well, it's baseball, things happen. But Turnbull, you are getting 97, 92, 87, and 87 pitches. He does have to go against the White Sox. They're playing tonight. I think Luis Robert was out of the lineup, and I'm pretty sure Yasmani Grandal is going to be out for a couple days. So a slightly weaker lineup, but you've got those 2. And then Ryan Yarbrough is he's a starter now. They aren't really putting the opener in front of him, but his pitch count has gone down in each of his 4 starts. The first start was 69 was the first one, then 87, 82, 77, 51. That's the direction I don't want to see here. He's 7,200, plus he's facing the Yanks. So,
yeah, Yarbrough is not really a pitcher I have too much interest in. And like you said, that's such a red flag that he only threw 51 pitches last inning. That also just 51 pitches last start. That topped off with pitching at Yankee Stadium. That's a brutal spot.
Yeah, and even without I was going to say Mike Stanton. It is Mike Stanton. It was Mike Stanton when he came into the league. Giancarlo Stanton and who's DJ LeMahieu's out. Is
Judge is also out.
Yeah, Judge is out. So, they have a borderline all-star team already out. It's still a tough matchup. So just be careful. All right, that'll do it for the early one. Later one, I think we have all but 2 of the pitchers. So let's go back here. Do we have any? We don't have any doubleheaders on this one. St. Louis. Is St. Louis and Cincinnati? No, they are not.
No, okay. There's usually a notification at the top of the DraftKings page when there's a doubleheader on a slate, and there is none. So I think we're clear.
All right. just making sure. We try to be careful here, leaving no stone unturned. So it looks like they've are not do. Let me guess. The Nationals are the Nationals playing? I know they were rained out. Actually, they're actually not on the Monday slate. So okay, that's why they weren't on anybody's. So let's talk for a second about that. That was an interesting thing. So you and I did the show live before lock on Wednesday. The Nationals, we knew it was probably 50-50 that there was going to be a delay. I wasn't anticipating a postponement. I thought it was 10 or 15% chance. Apparently, it was a little bit higher than that. But my approach on these things, particularly for baseball, is to not worry about it that much. Plus, it was a chalky situation. Now, you and I were also on Sunday when we both said taking Philly and the Mets out of our player pool. We didn't like it. It looked way worse. And then that game went off on time and they played it. So I don't know who to believe with weather anymore. I don't know. And even if we do think we know, the teams are doing things slightly differently because it's not quite as, I mean, the doubleheader is not great, but the doubleheader is 2 7-inning games. So you're really only adding 5 innings if you do a doubleheader. They already don't have any off days, so that's really not going to matter as much either. Making up is going to be kind of hard. Plus, everybody's schedule is all out of whack because of all the teams that have had to sit things out. So it seems like, long way of saying, it seems like they are not really trying to stick around and play these. Whereas I think we thought they were going to. That was sort of conventional wisdom before we've started seeing some of these just get pulled early, and it kind of all really came to a head on Friday night with who was it? The Twins and I've even forgotten now, but they were canceled out like 5 minutes after their game should have started. So there are 2 ways to approach this. One, just don't worry about it. It's going to come out in the wash. It's variance. Just think of it as your team getting no hit and your batters didn't do anything, or you X out those games. But if you X out those games, then you can't be mad when they play and good things happen. I mean, you can be mad, but it's a fool's errand because you were trying to avoid one outcome and the other happened. So that's why I'm not mad that this happened. It's like, well, you know what? Does it suck? Yes. Do I wish I would have done something different? Maybe. But maybe not. I don't feel that bad about it. And I had 30% of Eaton, 30% of, I forget the other National, and 25% of Freeman, and then most everybody else on 5 to 10%. So a third of my lineups are toast at this point. But that's okay because I didn't see where they landed with the rest of the field. I'm going to assume they were like 15 or 20%. I make enough lineups that I can overcome that. So we'll see, because now I know a whole chunk of the field is suppressed. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's just, life's too short to get mad about these things, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's DFS. Plenty of people will get mad anyway, but it's also the way I look at it though is like you said, it's just some of those situations are just losing slates, and you have to make those decisions. And I find it really tough to make weather decisions, like you said, because not only do we have to be able to try to forecast what the weather is, but then we also have to try to guess, are these teams going to try to play through the weather or not? Are there going to be other factors? Is the field going to get wet? And sometimes it's just kind of out of our control. So at the end of the day, a lot of times it's just guesswork. Like if you're really risk adverse, then just any game that has any amount of weather in the forecast, where even if it's like a 5 or 10% chance of rain, like if it's going to bother you that much if a game gets postponed, then just take it out of your player pool. I'm generally fine with taking the risk if I think it's a good spot. If I don't think it's a good spot and it's risky, then I'm going to take them out. But if it's a good spot that I think is worthwhile, like with targeting Eric Fetty on Wednesday night, I was like, I want to have exposure to him. And I did, and it came back to haunt me a little bit here. Although also at the time we're recording this, every game's like 1-0. So I don't know that they would have scored that many less runs than the teams that are currently ongoing in the slate anyway. So we'll see how it plays out. But it's in the shit happens category.
Yep, absolutely. All right, now into the meat of things here. We'll just borrow DraftKings here, and I'll just go game by game, and then I've got a few other tabs open so I can go look for additional information. But we've got Shane Bieber at 10,600. He is going to go against Pittsburgh. This will be Bieber's 6th start. He is 4-0, a 1.3 ERA, and the amazing part, 54 strikeouts in 34 2/3 innings. There's your top player of the night. Not much else to say. How do you feel about him? And then take it over for Trevor Williams on the other side.
Yeah, I'm not much of a Trevor Williams fan. I feel like we had a slate like a few days ago with Trevor Williams. So does this guy pitch every other day or something? But but either way, Yeah, it's hard to get away from Shane Bieber. He's been the best pitcher in baseball so far, and massive DFS upside. Like, he's had a couple games with like 14 strikeouts or something like that. And Trevor Williams on the other side, his strikeouts are up a little bit this year. He's striking out a career high 7.97 hitters per 9 innings, which is still not all that much. Also, in only 20 innings, the peripheral stats from him don't look great. He has a okay 3.98 ERA, but a 4.62 FIP, a 5.01 xFIP. Where he's getting lucky is with sequencing. He has a fairly high 76% left on base percentage, a 286 batting average on balls in play. Let me look down at his velocity and swing strike rate. Swing strike rate is decent, so maybe there's reason to think that he should be striking out a couple more guys. Velocity almost exactly in line with his career average. Still, I'm not a Trevor Williams guy. There's really good pitchers on this slate, kind of oddly, because it's only an 8-game slate. There's been a lot of 11-game slates with awful pitching choices. So I don't think we need to go to Trevor Williams. But on the other hand, Shane Bieber is somebody who is probably going to be my highest owned player on the slate.
All right. And I do want to point out a 3 implied run total for Pittsburgh. That is the lowest I can remember this year, unless the Marlins had one right around there against DeGrom or somebody like Scherzer or somebody like that. Next game, Milwaukee and Minnesota. It feels like these two teams have played each other like 25 times. So we've got Jose Berrios going against Brandon Woodruff. Woodruff is going to be making his 6th start as well. He is averaging about 5 innings per start. However, he's gone 4 1/3 and 4 in his last 2. Pitch counts, reverse chronological order, looks solid. 86, 91, 95, 92, and 85. This will be the first time this season he has actually squared off against Minnesota. And then Berrios, I never know what to do with him. His strikeouts are they are at 1 per inning. We like to see that, but batters are making a ton of contact. He's already allowed 4 home runs, 16 earned runs, 13 walks in 24 innings. That's no bueno. Tough matchup for him. If I had to land, I would take the $600 discount and smile with Brandon Woodruff in my lineup.
So one thing that's pretty funny about Berrios is he's kind of in this weird situation this year where I feel like nobody's rostering him, but nobody's stacking hitters against him either, because he has enough name value where people are like, oh, Berrios is good. I don't want to play him because I don't think he's that good, but I don't want to stack against him. I'm kind of on the side of it's okay to stack against him because he's just not been good at all this year. He has a 5.92 ERA, 5.03 FIP. The big issues with him, his number one has been the walks. He's walking nearly 5 hitters per 9 innings. And then he's also giving up a bunch of home runs, a 16% home run to fly ball rate. So you pair those two things together. He's putting guys on base. He's giving up home runs. That leads to a decent amount of upside. And he hasn't faced all that tough of competition. He's pitched against the Royals twice, Pittsburgh, and the Indians, who have not had a good offense this year, certainly well below expectations. So when you consider that Berrios is struggling that much against bad competition, and now he's going to be facing, pretty tough Milwaukee Brewers offense, I think the Brewers make for a decent stack. And obviously this is early enough in advance, so we don't have any kind of ownership data or anything like that. But I assume that they're not going to be very highly owned, and they're going to be a pretty good contrarian stack.
Moving along, we have the Dodgers in Seattle. It is a 5.3 implied run total. It should be Clayton Kershaw going against the Mariners. They're going to be putting out one of their 4 lefties, UC Kikuchi. The Mariners have a 3.3 implied run total. It is going to be in the low 70s at first pitch, so a little bit cooler there, especially for August in Seattle. That is more favorable for pitchers. Reminder, they do have the carport, if you will. It's open air stadium, but that's why there's never rain issues, but it does not do anything to keep the rest of the weather out. I don't know if I'm going to like Kershaw. 10,200. I will not be rostering him with a smile, but the question that then becomes is, well, which Clayton Kershaw are we really going to get? He has last game he gave up 1 home run. The one before that he gave up 3. The one before that, none. He's averaging just over a strikeout per inning. He's probably good to go for 85 to 90 pitches. He's 10,200. The Mariners are disappointing, except when they're facing good pitching, and then they seem to disappoint us because we take the pitchers against them. I'm at a little bit of a loss here. I will come down with Kershaw, but I would prefer Bieber Probably 2 to 1. This would be one where I may not go as much, where I do my little 30% of everybody and let the field decide if they're going to be above or below me. I think I want to land more on Bieber, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely prefer Bieber too. It's a little crazy that there's only a $400 price difference between them when you consider that, Bieber is averaging 35.3 DK fantasy points per start. You would think that he'd be somebody who'd be in like the 12 to 13,000 range at this point, because that's usually what we see from aces once we get a few weeks into the season is the guys who are pitching really well usually end up being pretty expensive, and that hasn't really been the case so far this year. So I think Bieber makes more sense than Kershaw. I'm not going to totally cross Kershaw out of my player pool. I think that he's worth rostering. The Mariners are still a decent matchup, and Kershaw, despite his older age, not quite the pitcher he used to be, he still strikes out 9.53 hitters per 9 innings this year. He's a 2.65 ERA. His FIP is quite a bit higher, but he's always been somebody whose ERA has outperformed his peripheral stats. For his career, 269 batting average on balls in play, so well below the league average of 300. He's just always been really good at limiting hard contact, so that's kind of to be expected for Kershaw. I think this is a good spot for him. He's going to be looking through the pitchers. He'll be one of my 5 highest owned pitchers, maybe even a top 3 highest owned pitcher for me. Bieber will be number 1 though, and he's good enough where I don't want to have any exposure to the Mariners.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up question. I think I agree. You get a one-off here or there, that's fine, but it feels a little tricky to stack against Kershaw. The main reason is the Dodgers still have a really decent bullpen. So even if he's out of the game, it's not like we should be excited by that. And if he gets, knocked out of the game, it's going to be in the 3rd or 4th inning anyway. And he'll, that's already going to have the clock ticking on the Mariners. You see Kikuchi he had that really out of nowhere good game. Here's a guy that basically last year, I'm going off the top of my head, but this was his first year over from the Japan League. I think he gave up like the 6th most home runs, but he did it in like 35 less innings than anybody else ahead of him. So his home run rate was bizarre. He had, what was his strikeout count for that game? He had 9 strikeouts 2 starts ago. His last one against Colorado, he ended up with 13 ground balls, which was nice to see, but he only had 3 strikeouts. Still went 95 pitches, which is a season high. It's just hard for me to recommend anybody against the Dodgers.
Yeah, same here. I mean, one thing that does make Kikuchi maybe mildly interesting is, one, the Dodgers are probably going to be fairly chalky on the slate. And 2, if you look at the pitching options, it's tough to find many SP2s to be confident in. And he has pitched better this year. He's shown more strikeout upside. The only cheap pitcher that I really like on this slate is Kevin Gausman at 6,500. So Kikuchi at 5,700, like, you absolutely need a cheap play. I think that he's not the worst pitcher in the world to roster, but certainly not somebody that I'm going out of my way and thinking like I need to have this guy in lineups.
I wanted to see what he had done differently here. He went that start that he did, got all the strikeouts. I think it was the slider he went to real heavy that he had not really done.
His velocity is way up this year.
Yeah.
So
it's his cutter. I'm sorry, it's his cutter. God, these different sites have the different naming conventions for the same pitches.
Yeah, so he throws a cutter this year, which he didn't throw last year. His fastball velocity is showing at 95.1 miles per hour. Last year, averaged 92.5. I don't know how legitimate that is. I have to check it what the sample size is on that. But if his velocity is up that much, that's a pretty promising sign. That seems unlikely to me because he's an older pitcher who looked kind of past it last year.
Well, the other thing they did last year is the Mariners came out and said they were going to spread his starts out, and then they decided they wanted to keep him on the regular because he's like, look, I'm used to starting, like every 4 days in Japan. That's just kind of what we do. I'd like to stay on that. So then they started limiting his innings in game, but you never knew when they were going to do it or not. And then if you go back and look, there were really only like 4 different occasions that they did that in particular. So it's neither here nor there. He is 29, so it's not like he's uber youngster, and he's got almost a decade in the Japan leagues under his belt. So it's not like the arm's getting any fresher. But maybe they've decided he's built up enough stamina or whatever it might be that they're like, all right, gloves are off now. Let's see what happens this year. We're on a shorter season. You're going to make 12 starts or whatever it is. So it's not the general wear and tear in your arm. Let's see what you can do. That could be what they're trying to do here this season.
Although, I mean, look at his velocity. I mean, it's up across the board. His fastball velocity is up 3 miles per hour. Changeup's up 3 miles per hour. He's throwing his slider 6 miles per hour harder. Like, this is really weird data. I don't know what to make of it. What maybe he was dealing with an injury last year, right? Like, that's if I had to say what's the situation where Kikuchi pitches well this year, it's that his velocity is way up, and the reason it was down last year was because he was hurt. There's no real way for us to get data on his velocity while he's pitching in Japan, which makes this a little hard. Like, if we were to find out that he threw 95 miles per hour in Japan also, then I'd kind of find that interesting. So I think I'm kind of talking myself into Kikuchi as just like a throwaway SP2 on DraftKings tomorrow. Not a guy I have a lot of confidence in, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he gets bombed against the Dodgers. But just given this is a smaller 8-game slate than what we've seen, I have a little bit of intrigue there.
All right, I'm just seeing if it will take too long to find it. I was just here's something from March, and they're quickly talking about the reinvention of UC Kikuchi. This is from Lookout Landing, which is a blog by Mariners fans. I'm just reading. So this was during spring training, so not the summer camp, but spring training. Kikuchi's regularly hitting 95 with his fastball. His sliders reach the low 90s. This is not a case of hot stadium radar gun either. These velocity readings have been confirmed by the TrackMan system installed in Peoria. Blah, blah, blah. Regular caveats apply when dealing with spring stats, but this increase in velocity is nice nonetheless. Says the biggest problem over the last season was him maintaining consistent mechanics. His throwing motion is a little more complex than most. He has a slight hesitation at the peak of his windup, a long arm motion, and an inconsistent leg kick. If any one of these is out, it's kind of like what we said with Paxton. If any one of these is out of whack, velocity and command will suffer. So, and
it's just so hard too, because we're not familiar with him because he pitched in Japan before here. So our only exposure to him is last year, where he was one of the worst pitchers in baseball, right? Like, remember the first slate we did together that he pitched, we were like, his home run rate was like unbelievably bad last year. Right. Like, he was on like a record-setting pace for home run to fly ball rate, and the only thing that saved him was that he was so bad that he came out of games early and didn't have the opportunity to get up a lot of home runs. So yeah, maybe he turns it around this year. The velocity is very encouraging.
All right, 5,700. He'll stay in this as an SP2. I don't know that I'll want to go more than 10%. I may, again, be a little more consolidated on some of the pitching tonight because we do have a few more decent ones to come. But remember, we do have a DFS strategy show. That will be Thursday morning. We will go NBA, then MLB. Then we will do NBA live before lock for those early games. And then there will be a baseball live before lock before the main slate. Definitely check that out. It's lots of fun here at Awesemo. Next game, Baltimore and Boston. So here's the comparators for Kikuchi. We have Nate Eovaldi at 5,900 and Asher Wojciechowski at 5,300. Woj is gone 78, 65, 67, and 92 pitches. Eovaldi definitely stretched out 89, 91, 85, 89. I will land with Eovaldi going against Baltimore, but please note Baltimore has not been bad this year, and we are now almost a month into the season. I don't have a run total for this game, but I can tell you it will be in the upper 70s in Baltimore, and I can confirm it's supposed to be a nice day, and I'm about 40 miles from Baltimore.
I could also confirm that Anthony Santander out of nowhere is like the best hitter in baseball. Guy hits like 2 home runs every slate. So there are some.
Yeah, wait till he does it against Scherzer or somebody. Then I'll know he's for real. Wait, what's that? He's already done it against Scherzer? Yeah, he did.
I think he did. I think he did. So that's kind of interesting. The other thing too with Eovaldi, throws very hard. Like, Eovaldi's always going to throw hard, and you're always going to watch Eovaldi pitch and be like, this guy should be an ace, and then he gives up a bunch of runs, kind of without fail, every time he pitches. Eovaldi's is a pitcher who I think he has a little bit of upside because he's able to get strikes out about a hitter per inning, is cheap. And then on the other side, I think there's upside in the Orioles too, because when Eovaldi's not going well, he's given up home runs. He's a 20.7% home run to fly ball rate this year, 22.9% home run to fly ball rate last year. So Eovaldi's either going to get a bunch of strikeouts and pitch, like 5 innings with 6 strikeouts and no runs, or if he does happen to give up runs, they're going to be via home runs. So there's upside in Eovaldi. There's upside in the Orioles side of the game as well.
All right. For the Asher Wojciechowski action, I'm just looking. It's interesting. The projection systems don't hate him. They've got him between 8 and 8.5 strikeout per 9. I was not expecting to see it that high. He has bounced around multiple organizations. He's been with the White Sox, the Indians, the Orioles, the Reds, the Marlins, the Astros, and the Blue Jays. Let's see, majority of those are in minor leagues, but he did get a cup of coffee in 2015 with the Astros, in 17 with the Reds, and then 19 in this year with the Orioles. So he's been around for a long time. It's not like we're waiting for talent to appear. He's 31 and a half. So for anybody, and sometimes I just like to point that out because you hear like Asher Wojciechowski and you're like, oh, this guy's probably a young, talented, maybe he was like a first or a second round pick, or whatever it might be. And it's like, no, not really at all. So he is going against Boston. This is not the same Boston with Mookie Betts and friends, but it's still a tough Boston lineup. Damn it, I think I'll have Kikuchi ahead of him. I think I'll put Eovaldi ahead of Kikuchi, just barely, though.
Yeah, probably for me too, just because of the ease of the matchup. Even though we've mentioned that the Orioles' offense has been better than expected, they're certainly not the Dodgers. So I'd rather have a pitcher going up against the Orioles than the Dodgers. As for Wojciechowski, so he is projected for a decent amount of strikeouts. Like you said, projection models have him over 8 strikeouts. They also have him projected for around a 6 ERA this year. So that's also an issue working against him. So I think it's going to be a situation where he's either striking guys out or he's giving up a lot of runs, which is kind of what happened with him last year also. He had 4.92 ERA, 5.3 FIP, 5.61 xFIP, and then struck out about about a hitter per inning. Walks, gives up home runs, a lot of fly balls too. Like, does not get any ground balls. He's a 30% ground ball rate for his career. So the balls get hit in the air. A lot of them get hit hard. That leads to home runs. So he's a high upside pitcher to target for bats. The one issue there is that the Red Sox have been a pretty crappy offense this year.
All right. Our next one actually has 2 decent pitchers. We have Denison Lumet at 8,500. I am definitely fired up for that one. I think that's a nice discount to consider pivoting away from Bieber in some cases there. And then we have Kyle Gibson at 7,300. That's also a pretty solid price point. He has the tougher matchup going against San Diego. This one is in San Diego. I say tougher because Texas is not the same Texas. We're trying to figure out, is it ballpark? Is it team? Remember, they're not in Arlington, the ballpark anymore. They're in whatever it is, Arlington, the field, but it's a covered park. They've had the roof open one day, and the only reason they did was to see what it was like when it was open. So they have 16 home runs as a team, 17 home runs as a team on the year. That is minuscule at this point. Anthony Santander, I think, has 9 himself.
Get a lot.
Tatis has 11, Trout has 10. So 16 as a team, 6 of them to Gallo. Yikes. What do you want to do with this pair of pitchers? Because I think this leads us into some nice late slate action as well as main slate.
Yeah, so I like Lumet more of the two. Not only has Lumet been really good this year, he's a very fantasy-friendly pitcher. He has a 1.59 ERA. He's striking out 11.44 hitters per 9 innings. Lumet's been awesome this year. He's definitely one of the more fantasy-friendly pitchers in the entire league. And let's see, what has his pitch counts been? Slightly limited, but he's gotten up to 91 pitches. But he's striking out so many guys that even if he is held to his usual like 85 to 90 pitches, he could get enough strikeouts to do damage in that amount of innings. And then the other thing also is, like you said, the Rangers do not have a good offense, so it's a very favorable matchup for him.
All right, our next one is talent versus experience. What we'll go with. We have Adam Wainwright at 8,300. Wainwright has made 2 starts. Again, the Cardinals had a 16-day break for COVID-related safety. Wainwright's been solid this year. He is like a million years old. On the other side, you have Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray is 9,500, but he is someone that really needs to be in our conversation here. He is. These are DK fantasy points. 30 or more in 3 of his 5 starts. 28 in one and 12 in the other. That's pretty good. I'm looking at his strikeouts. He has 10, 7, 8, 11, and 9. He has 45 total in 30 innings. This is phenomenal. He has been doing it with 2 different pitches. Major League Baseball's probable starting pitchers page, I like to credit them, says during an 8-1 win over the Pirates on Friday, Gray saw hitters not biting on his 2-strike curveball, so he changed his game plan and attacked more with his fastball for the majority of his 10 strikeouts over the 6 2/3 innings. Before, it had been kind of his curveball, which has improved this year, that was getting him somewhere. I guess people were waiting on it because they saw him starting to lean on it. And hey, he had a nice day. What do you want to do with these guys? Wainwright is the epitome of smoke and mirrors at this point.
Yeah, no Wainwright for me, especially because I mean now as we go through this game by game, it's like well, there are so many good pitching options on this slate. Like, can't we spread them around a little bit? Like me and you, like Sunday tradition is I wake up and I do a show with EMac where we just talk about terrible pitchers that are like
that I play 15% of each.
For some reason, there's 15 pitchers that are 5,600 pitching at Coors Field every Sunday morning, and then we've got this 8-game slate on a Thursday, and it's like every pitcher averages like 25 DK fantasy points per start. So Sonny Gray, I like him going up against the Cardinals. Like you said, he's been really good this year. He averaged 28.6 DraftKings points per start. He's been close to unhittable this year. As for Wainwright, there's just so many good pitching options on the slate that it's hard for me to find him making the cut, especially when he doesn't have nearly the strikeout upside of some of these other guys.
Yep. So let's get to our last 2 games here. How about we'll call this one disappointing talent. You have Sean Maniac working his way back from injury from last year. 8,100. He's still priced like he is the Sean Manaea that has the potential to get 10 strikeouts. He really doesn't. He's gone 78, 71, 74, 69, and 55 pitches. I find it hard to see him much over 80 for pitches. He is 8,100. It just makes it tough, and people are hitting him. Alex Young, if I remember correctly, gives up about 1 million home runs per 9 to righties. So he is someone that is, I know you've got the numbers up there. I'm just going off the top of my head, but he's got 14 total innings. He's given up 4 home runs. He does have 15 strikeouts, but he's playing Oakland. We know Oakland has massive power, and they can get very righty in a hurry. I'm not really a fan of either of these guys, even on the late slate. That makes it tough.
Yeah, especially because there's so many good pitchers to target. I mean, in terms of good pitchers to roster, this is one of the spots where I feel like we have decent pitchers to stack against. So Alex Young, at first glance, you look at him, it's like, wow, he strikes out 9.64 hitters per 9 innings this year, 3.86 ERA. He's done a lot of that out of the bullpen, and those numbers figure to be worse as a starter, and he still benefited from a lot of good luck. So he has a 5.36 FIP. The reason being is that he's a crazy left on base percentage. He has a 96.2 strand rate, 243 BABIP. So he's getting really lucky. Guys that are hitting balls in play are generally hitting at fielders, and then when he's getting guys actually on base, it's just good sequencing in his favor. Guys are getting hits with nobody on base, and then they don't get hits when there are actual hitters on base. So that just leads
96.2 left on base.
That's impossibly high. Like there's no way that's going to keep up. That's going to be every pitcher basically typically ends up around 70 for the season. So if you look at the Zips projection for him, he's projected for a 5.09 ERA for the rest of the season. That's about what I'd expect from him. The A's, I think, are one of the top teams to stack on the slate.
Absolutely. All right. That takes us to the last one. I know you had kind of mentioned Kevin Gausman as a potential guy here. I think he's interesting. The price is right, depending on how you feel about the Giants' new stadium.
And Coors Field too.
You know what? 6,500. I'm willing to roll the dice, main slate and regular slate. On the other side, you've got Matt Andriese that is going to be getting the start here for the Angels. It looks like he has gone about 40 to 45 pitches in each of his appearances. He'll probably be good for 2 innings. I don't know who's next coming in after that. Let me see if I can figure that out while you talk about these guys.
Yeah, so the thing about Gasman, and first of all, I have not had more difficulty predicting any pitcher in baseball since the time I started playing DFS than Kevin Gausman. Kevin Gausman is probably, over the last 5 years, anybody who's played DFS, Kevin Gausman's probably the highest variance pitcher in the league, because at any given moment, he's the type of guy where he could look like an ace. Gausman goes 7 innings, 8 strikeouts, look unhittable, and the next time he comes out, he gives up like 3 home runs in the first inning, and he doesn't make it through 2 innings. So Gausman's really hard to predict. So far this year, he's been more of the good than bad, especially because of the strikeout numbers. He's striking out 12 hitters per 9 innings, an okay 4.21 ERA. his peripheral numbers suggest that he's been pretty unlucky. 3.11 FIP, 3.14 xFIP. The BABIP's a little high. The strand rate's really low, so kind of the opposite of Alex Young. I think that Gausman is a decent pitcher to look at if you're looking for somebody cheap. He is my top priority. Like I'd roster him before Eovaldi, I'd roster him before Kikuchi. So if you roster one of the expensive pitchers and need a cheaper one to pair him with, I think Gausman is the guy.
All right, I'm looking here. It looks like the last time Andrisi pitched a bunch, was multiple relievers were in that game. They also used Jaime Barria on Tuesday for 66 pitches. He was the guy I thought might be the other long reliever. I don't know. Let's see. This is showing. I'm seeing 9 different relievers in their camp. On their roster at the moment. The only 2 that have thrown more than 20 pitches in an outing is Andrisi, who we know is going to be starting, and then Barria, who went on Tuesday, and they're not going to use him. He was like a swingman last year, a 5th starter. He has some. If you ever know he's the probable long reliever, target against him because he gives up some home run. But I don't know what else to say on that one.
Yeah, it's tough to know who's going to end up actually pitching the bulk of the game for the Angels. San Francisco also doesn't really have a great offense, so they're not really a team I'm dying to stack. If I had to pick one side of the game, it would be the Giants bats over whoever ends up pitching the bulk of the game for the Angels, though.
All right. That is going to wrap it up for us. Reminder that promo code to get 1 week of NBA for $8.24 is Mamba in honor of Kobe Bryant. That promo lasts through Mamba Day, August 24th. You guys get the significance of those numbers. With that, gamers, good luck.